Sequel number 87, the arrival of the new bishop of Uganda Diocese in 1912. But before then, there were some events happening on the ground because the church was busy. It was not at a standstill simply because there was no bishop. I'm Christopher Amos Chikomeko Ntambi, the author of these sequels, celebrating the Church of Uganda at 150 years. We are celebrating early to make awareness. So we celebrate the church history and we also celebrate the state history. The pioneer original Anglican church in Uganda was at Natete, but it was burnt down in the Civil War of 1888. The second church, therefore, was not built at Natete, but at Makerere Hilltop. That is where the second ever church of the Anglican Church was ever built. I think today it's called St. John, and it's found in Diocese of Kampala. Now, the third church was built at the foot of Bukesa Hill. Bukesa Hill is what later became Namirembe, but at the foot. And therefore, the many churches that have sprung up across Uganda are very good, and their history is there, but that does not remove Natete remaining as the humble origin of the first ever church structure in the Anglican Church. I hear many of you talk about Namirembe, oh Namirembe, oh Namirembe, oh Namirembe, oh Namirembe, but you are very wrong. It should be oh Natete, oh Natete, oh Natete. And I want to thank Natete Archdeaconry for building a giant church. I think you call it Galituoleka, something that should be seen by all if I was to translate. If the artist impression that we see is what you are building, then I can assure you that as an archdeaconry, you have brought up your position as the very first spot where the church was ever built in the history of Uganda. And let nobody take away that from you by alleging that Namirembe was the first. It was not even the second. Okay, history is that sweet. So, on the 15th of November 1911, the Natete Mission Church was revived by laying of the foundation stone at 5 o'clock in the evening by Sir Apollo Kagwa, who represented the new Kabaka Daudi Chwa II. The Reverend Ernest Miller, chaplain of the bishop, who was yet, I think he had already resigned, and Reverend Bartolomeo Zimbe led the service. Earlier in the morning, it had rained heavily, and the impassable roads meant that the attendance was very poor. However, the treasurer of the kingdom, Kizito Kisingiri, was very much in attendance, as were 14 other chiefs. There were 7 lay European missionaries and almost 160 native Christians. Katikiro Apollo Kagwa afterwards served tea with bread to the guests. Thank you for the foundation stone. And therefore, when you look at the foundation stone, and for example, you see in your museum a date 15th November 1911, that does not mean it's the original church. The original church burnt down. Yeah? Okay, let's move on. In July of 1912, let's begin with January. In January of 1912, actually on the 25th, which is normally St. Paul's Day, it's St. Paul's feast day in the Christian calendar across the world. So on that day, in 1912, the Venerable John Jamieson Willis, the Archdeacon of Kavirondo, who had been appointed the new Bishop of Uganda Diocese, was consecrated at Westminster Abbey in London by the Archbishop of Canterbury, the Most Reverend Randall Davidson. 8 bishops attended the consecration, as well as the Church Missionary Society clergy based in London. Of course, Alfred Tucker was present to lay his pastoral mess on the holy table, which was then handed over to Bishop John Jamieson Willis. He was still a bachelor. Willis, at 38, he was still a bachelor. But his sister was married to the Archdeacon of Devon. He was called the Venerable Cobham. Therefore, the only sibling of the bishop was present to witness the consecration of Willis. The new bishop of Uganda Diocese began to travel to Uganda, a very familiar route and journey. Therefore, when he was in Mombasa, he met the Right Reverend William George Peel. As a matter of fact, they met in Nairobi. He was the Bishop of Mombasa, but remember, Mombasa Diocese was the wall of Kenya at that time, with the exception of Kavirondo, which was part of Uganda Diocese. 1911. So the two agreed to keep Kavirondo under Uganda Diocese. So it was their agreement. Bishop John Jamieson Willis of the Diocese of Uganda and Bishop William George Peel of Mombasa, which took all of Kenya, are the ones who agreed to keep Kavirondo under Uganda Diocese. Why did they have to agree? Because in 1904, remember, the order in council law extended the borders, and Uganda now, a border extended from all the Kavirondo area was given up to Kenya, and now we went up to Ugingo Island in Lake Victoria. That is where the borderline passed. So it was these two bishops who agreed that despite the political borders for the dioceses, they want to recognize those borders. However, they agreed that Mombasa Diocese should reclaim Kisumu, Uasin Gishu, and the rest of Western Kenya. Okay, so Northern Kavirondo is the one which was kept under Uganda Diocese in recognition of Bishop Willis' past labors in the area. He could speak fluently most of the local languages in the Kavirondo region, which included Abaluya language and the Luo or Bajaluo language. Bishop Wilfred, not Bishop Wilfred, but Bishop Taka arrives in Buganda and is received warmly. The new bishop, on arrival in Uganda, was met by the Venerable Archdeacon Walker, and they received him to sit on his cathedral at Namirembe. He had traveled by train from Nairobi to Kisumu and by steamer on Lake Victoria. The new Bishop of Uganda arrived at Port Bell on the 12th of March in 1912. Port Bell was a port, and he was received at Port Bell by, among others, the Kabaka of Uganda, Chwa II. He was also met there by the Katikiro, Apollo Kagwa, and the procession moved on to the foot of Bukesa Hill, where schoolgirls and boys lined up on the sides of the road, waving and cheering to the new bishop as he ascended the hill of Namirembe. A welcome and thanksgiving church service in the makeshift shelter, because remember the cathedral, I've just told you in yesterday's sequel, they were digging the foundation and leveling the place. So there was a makeshift cathedral. So that's where the service was held, and it was led by the Reverend Henry Duta Chitakule, assisted by the Venerable Herbert Walker was not available, and he had apologized. Remember I said earlier that Walker was not very happy with the appointment of his junior as the archdeacon. He found himself to be the most suitable. So this absence of him at the welcoming ceremonies of the bishop were therefore not surprising. Maybe he went to talk to his God to make him calm down. How could he face his junior? He found himself too senior How could he look at a junior who has become a bishop? Oh, he could even call him names. If possible, he could even slap. But no way. Here was the 38-year-old. He was the bishop. Oh, so whether you were attending his welcoming ceremony or not, the bishop had arrived. And so the new bishop greeted the people in Luganda language. This is amazing. The man knew Luganda. Yeah, because he was in Ankole, he was in Entebbe, and these missionaries, that was one of their priorities, to learn local languages. You see, he even spoke Luo and Abaluya where he was. And so there was a big tea party at the Church Missionary Society mission station at Namirembe that afternoon. In the evening, the bishop was taken to Mengo Palace for a cup of tea with Kabaka Chua II. And therefore, all we can say in this particular sequel is welcome to the era of Bishop John Jamieson Willis. He will be in charge, and we are now beginning sequels of the church when he's the bishop, and they will take us all the way to 1934. May the good Lord bless us all.